Shinobi two-wheelers, this is internet personality Vangelus, and Legacy Evolution first dipped into the animated universe with Deluxe Prowl, a resurrection of one of the most impactful deluxes in the entire original Transformers animated line. Like, that's the one some people reacted to in 2007 with, quote, "That can't possibly transform between those two modes. I can't believe Hasbro is just selling an action figure with a separate bike," end quote. Between that and the tepid reception many of the Legacy Prime Universe pieces received, this bot had stacks of pressure waiting for him as soon as he arrived on shelves.
This video was sponsored in part by ToyHacks.com. Use the code BUNNYVANGELUS through the month of April 2024 for 15% off your order of labels and other paraphernalia. Using the code supports the channel. Supporting the channel feeds the machine.
Legacy Evolution Prowl is not a bulky robot, but compared to many collective memories of animated Prowl, he looks like he's wearing a whole extra onesies worth of motorcycle layers. Assumedly attempting to gel together with the overall Legacy Evolution look, this take on animated Prowl flips the percentages from the original, going from ninja with a hint of traffic cop to traffic cop that smells faintly of ninja. He still has several key visual notes like shins and calves made of unbroken wheels, long forearm pods, and those two thingamies sticking up off his back. But other key visuals have gotten more pronounced, like the biker pants thighs or the G1 Prowl forehead crest. A crest that rests atop a very decent head sculpt. Like, there's nothing terribly wrong about it, but it definitely feels closer to a Datsun Prowl than an animated Prowl, merging G1's helmet with animated sunglass-style optics, and finding a chin length that rests somewhere in between. Amidst all this, Legacy Evolution Prowl's color scheme and layout both call back strongly to animated, nailing the gold, black, and tan combo that will always anchor this figure to its intended identity. Prowl's accessories are actually built into his body, as each leg contains a removable pod that can unfurl into one of his classic throwing stars. Hypothetically. This is supposed to be a triple-geared automorph that changes shape by twisting the axle. However, I've found that the almost exclusively nylon plastic construction creates tons of internalized micro-friction that causes the whole gimmick to just jam up and not work most of the time. Silver lining, that nylon construction means I've felt fine to just manually, loudly, crunchily unfold the blades with my bare hands. The blades can fit into either of Prowl's hands. The right hand, with a standard issue 5mm hole, is a tricky scenario where you need to kinda wedge a little etched circle around the right thumb. Prowl's left hand is actually sculpted differently, designed to accept one of the throwing star blades in its thinner grip. The whole thing is kinda janky, despite its good intentions. Oh, because it was one of my very first questions, I'll just share that you can assume a wheel legs mode on this animated universe Prowl. My skepticism came from how much the original Deluxe's own wheel leggery was tied to its transformation scheme, but that particular motion remains on this update. Well, enough of it remains. The size and shape of Prowl's head makes it very, easy to see that his ball socket neck has lots of range in multiple axes, and just look at all this. It's everywhere! I love it! His shoulders are full range to a T, and, you know, they do this part. The elbow bends a 90 with a bicep swivel. You can see all the inner workings there. I'm sure someone has sold a 3D printed kit with relation to this. The transformation joint lets you bend the hands at the wrist inwards a bit. Sometimes this can be helpful with some weapon accessories, but not in the cool sword way. The waist works, but then also one click, and that's friggin' cool! One click. One click! Anyway, these weird, funny-looking thighs and hips, they go, oh, look at that! That's beyond a Van Damme. That's a full-scale pile driver, jackhammer, pogo stick teabag. And, you know, they kick pretty high up as well. That's pretty badass. There's thigh swivel. You stuff some chewing gum in there if you want. The knees, they bend just past 90, which is really cool. But then, here's the... Hey, calm down. Here's the pièce de résistance. The ankles, not only can they tilt, right? Not only can the feet both, you know, point downwards and tilt on this lovely joint, the entire frigging foot, look at this! Because of the transformation, because of the design, you can arc the shape. Will you calm down? You can arc the shape of Prowl's leg, and dynamically speaking, this stuff is so golden. You can add a little bit more of a very drawn, forward swept curve to the leg. You can pull it back a little bit for putting the foot back a little bit farther if there's like a walking pose or something you want to do. This is a huge articulation add. The one and only downside is it has no detented locking base points, so you have to visually find that. But otherwise, like, Prowl here, super fun to pose, very much because of what the legs are able to add to anything that you're doing. Once upon a time, we fandom onlookers assumed this is a retool of Legacy RC. How wrong we were. Legacy Evolution Prowl is not a complex transformer to transform, but he has some extremely specific order of operations requirements that can lead to a lot of step retracing if you don't know the basics of how things work. A primary thing to remember is that the waist needs to be twisted 90 degrees for pretty much the entire process, and the kickstand-bearing foot is the one that moves to the back of the bike mode. While a lot of things eventually lock together from the front to center, the true bummer of Legacy Evolution Prowl's conversion is in the rear. The bot mode arms lightly tab together with, like, a single tab, and one of the kneecaps looks like it's supposed to lock in beneath, but instead it merely rests there. My satisfaction muscle twitches, waiting for its final release, and yet, this segment has now concluded. Aside from the rickety hand feel of the rear end, Prowl's motorcycle mode is completely fine. It's got the right shapes and colors, and the back of his bot mode head even has a little dashboard sculpted on it. Painters and labelers, go to town. Bear in mind that is also still the back of his head. I do wish the red and blue signal lights on the back had a silver underbelly to help them pop more, and the stored weapons create a lopsided look if you stare at the bike mode too long from the wrong angles. But there is a kickstand! 10 out of 10. Well, 9 out of 10. I can't get the thing to flip out easily due to its tight fit, and often have to move an entire piece out of the way to get my whole finger meat in there. Also, it's still pretty easy to tip Prowl over with the kickstand deployed. I approached Legacy Evolution Animated Universe Prowl with a tepid optimism, and while I wouldn't call this a bad figure for my own tastes, I was very surprised at the parts that actually let me down. The transformation's lack of satisfying clicky closure, and the strange calamity of the throwing stars, those are two things I thought would turn out, regardless of anything else. The big shame about the throwing stars is that their ineffective and parts-heavy execution only leaves my mind churning on all the accessories that didn't get done. Which is to say that, yes, I am fully nostalgia pining for a traffic light on a string. Let they without such sin cast the first stone. Put the stone down, you're also a sinner. As a small epilogue, I think it did not help that Prowl spent an entire line being the singular animated transformer in Legacy. Stop bringing up the Auto Trooper, that situation is weird. Now that some of his friends have turned up in Legacy United, I found myself warming back up to this figure in a bog-bottom basic boy, they're the team from the cartoon kind of way. Anyway, this has been internet personality Vangelus, and yeah, I know DNA Design have a samurai sidecar upgrade out for this guy, but no, I don't know how it turned out that thing costs as much as a Voyager. One whole animated universe Optimus Prime, if you will.